Hello and welcome to Irresistible You Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. My name is Karen Seltz. I am your host, and I've been hearing a lot about beliefs recently, and there's so much talk about change your beliefs, change your life, change your reality. And my question when people say these things like that is, how in the heck are we supposed to change our beliefs? Now, let's back up. What are beliefs? I've heard lots of definitions. The one I like is, well, one of them that I love the most is beliefs are thoughts that you continue to think so much that you no longer think them. They just become the fabric. But here's the other part. Beliefs, you don't know their beliefs. You have no idea. They're the things that they just are. You take them at face value. They seem like facts to you, and they are not. So if you've had the experience that dogs are mean because you got bitten by one when you were little, then you are going to believe that all dogs are mean, and to you that would be a fact, right? Or all men are jerks. That's what some women believe because they've been burned by three men. Like out of all the billions of men, they've been burned by three, so therefore all men are evil. Well, anytime you find yourself saying always or never, check yourself, because I guarantee there's a belief in there, because nothing is always or never except maybe gravity. But no, if you're in space, there's no gravity in effect. So I don't know. Challenge me, prove me wrong. What's always or what's never? I don't know. Are you always nice or always mean? I don't think so. Are you always angry or always happy? I don't think so. So it's starting to get to the root of these things. And I just had this amazing conversation before recording my podcast with my buddy John. And we were talking about beliefs. And I'm like, So I was at this group meditation where there were about 50 people, called Walk for the World, with Dr. Joe Dispenza. He wasn't there, but he organized it, and it was global. So people formed groups all around the world and walked together at exactly the same time for peace, for love, for joy, for connection, for community. And the couple that helped me organize it had brought a cooler of water, and they left after the meditation. And I was so thirsty. A couple of us were sitting on a blanket out in the sun in Phoenix, and someone had left a water near where the cooler had been, and they had taken a couple sips out of it. So I was down about that much. And I'm like, I'm so thirsty. I don't believe in germs. So I just picked it up and started drinking it. And this other girl was like, that was really good for me to see, because I would never do that in a million years. I said, well, I don't believe in germs. But as my buddy and I were talking, I'm like, we started talking about STDs, and I'm like, oh, that's not practical. It's not practical in that regard. And then I'm thinking, well, that's a belief. If I believe I cannot get sick from a water bottle, what makes me believe I could get an STD? So it was a really interesting conversation, and a one that I had no idea that that was a belief. It just seemed like reality. Like if you have unprotected sex, you could get an STD. So I'm like, that's so fascinating to me. Like finding the edges of when you start to question yourself, or when you don't even question things, you just take them as fact. You know, there's a belief in there, because my buddy doesn't believe that. He believes he's invincible. And so when I believe I'm invincible to germs, I don't get sick. So it's just really interesting finding those edges. And I heard this guy talking about beliefs, and my dog, she's going to keep scratching. Hold on. Come on, Lola. Come on. She loves to come in. Okay. So this guy was talking about beliefs, and one of the ways to get under and to try to figure them out, because if people come to you and say, oh, I have this negative core belief, that's not the thing. Because if it's a belief, you don't know that it's a belief. That's like an awareness you've had, but it's not a belief. A belief is something that it's a perceived truth. Like you don't even question it. So how could you look at it as a belief? Really think about it. It's really interesting to think about these things like this. And that's what I'm here for. I'm down for it all. So anyways, this guy was saying, whose love did you crave the most growing up? Now, if you were raised with a mom and a dad, which one did you crave their love more? And then the next question is, who did you have to be in order to get that love? Because I mean, I don't know anybody, maybe my buddy John, growing up that they didn't think they had to perform or be good or please their parent in some way in order to receive love or praise or hugs or whatever it was, allowance, gifts, whatever your love language was. So who did you have to be? And I don't use that word lightly, the have to. Who did you have to be in order to get that love? And then here's the good, the $1,000,000 question. Who could you never be and get that love? So if you were to be like this, that love would be withheld from you, or you perceive that it would have been withheld from you. Because usually it's a perception that we have. We're like, oh, if I were like this, my mom wouldn't love me. And in our episode today, I'm like, it just reminded me that I had this thing growing up that my mom, her bosses, Lola, what are you doing? Her bosses had more money than she did. And she had this thing that she used to say, like, people with money think they're better than everybody else. She also said people with education think they're better than everybody else. And I went and got my master's degree. Oh, so because I already had education, I'm like, oh, she's already like holding that against me. Then I better not ever have money, because then she will never love me. So I made that agreement, and I'm taking a grief class right now in rapid resolution therapy, and it's phenomenal. It's absolutely brilliant. And we practice on one another in the class. And I was in a breakout room, and this woman did a meditation or a process kind of for another person. And I'm like, well, what am I doing? So I just closed my eyes and decided I would connect with my mom, who passed away 7 years ago. So I easily connected with my mom during this process, and it was so beautiful. And one of the things is like, you might get a message, and I heard her clear as day saying, I was wrong about that. Go kick some ass, go make some money, go share your gifts, go spread your wings, create abundance, create more abundance for you and your family, have experiences. And just to hear that, like, she's like, I was wrong. And we often, if somebody passes away, there's a belief, we have a belief that they're exactly who they were or how they were when their body left this plane. But they are without their limiting beliefs, right? They are clear. They are back with source or God, and they're clean and clear. And from that place, they can meet you up here. So she's like, I was wrong. I am your biggest cheerleader. I want you to be big. I want you to use your voice, because I used to have this thing like, who the heck do you think you are? And obviously I got over that a while ago, as far as like showing up and using my voice and sharing my opinion and owning it and not being so worried about what people think or if people are going to reject me. Clearly, I would not be doing this show. I wouldn't be showing up if that were still an issue for me. So that one, I'm like, okay, whatever, I got that. But the money one has been hanging on, man. It is really deeply rooted. So just getting that message was so beautiful. It was so beautiful and so liberating. So I feel this lifting of that. For me, it's more like an agreement, because I've been aware of it for some time. So that makes it not a belief. It makes it like just an awareness, right? So where in your life are you getting results that don't match what you say you want? There's some kind of unconscious thing running there, some kind of program running. And usually it's a belief. And Bashar, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bashar, but he's channeled by Daryl Anka. I believe that's his name. Yeah. And he has this quote. Am I going to remember it? What must I believe? What must I be believing in order to get this type of result? In order to be experiencing this, what must I be believing? And if you think about your mind is filtering through millions of bits of information, your unconscious mind, every single second. I mean, that is mind blowing to me. Like how we have these high processing, these complex computers between our ears, and they do so much. It's so mind blowing. Millions of bits of information every second. And it's keeping a record of all of it, even if you don't consciously remember that there were three birds flying to your right and one dead lizard on the ground. I mean, you're not going to ever remember that, but there's a record of it in your mind of every single thing. Now, consciously, we can't handle that much information. So we're filtering through this thing called the reticular activating system, which it determines what is important for you. What's important for your survival, number one. And number two, if you prime it, if you're like, I'm really interested in this thing, show me more of that. Show me how the world is kind. Show me how the world is abundant. Show me how I'm always taken care of. I mean, you can say whatever you want it to look for, and it filters through those bits of information and brings to your conscious awareness the ones that you tell it to, or if you don't tell it to, the ones that's always brought to your mind. You're just going to live Groundhog Day after day. You're going to keep saying the exact same thing. So tell it what you want to see. Like sometimes we have these philosophies, like Bashar says, every single thing that is happening for you. Every single thing. In fact, lots of spiritual texts will say that, like A Course in Miracles, The Way of Mastery. Every single thing that happens will be used for your growth and development. It is for you. The universe is loving. It is supporting you to become who you came here to be. So, what do you want to believe? If you know everything is happening for you, Bashar says, who cares what happens? So if you knew that and you got a flat tire, what's a way you could respond? Well, for me, it'd be like, okay, if this is happening for me, bring it. I can happily change my tire. Maybe I'll meet the man of my dreams. Maybe he'll pull over and help me. Like, I don't know what it's for. Maybe because I got that flat tire, I avoided an accident that would have, really hurt me or killed me. Who knows? But there's always some way to look at it. And we don't need to know the why. We don't need to know that. We want to. I had a meeting with a woman yesterday. I'm like, sometimes don't you wish you weren't so smart? Because smart people analyze things and they can see like all the possible dangers. And it's sometimes exhausting to see all that. And it causes a lot of paralyzation inside. So back to everything's happening for me. What if you could adopt that as a belief and just start playing with it? Whatever it is you want to believe, what if you could play with it? Well, you can. Just remind yourself, like before you leave the house, okay, show me this. All right, let's play with this today. Let's play with abundance. Show me how the world's abundant, and then notice all the money you find on the street or in the store or whatever. Sometimes if you go pay somewhere and they have the cash where there's change, sometimes there'll be change there. It's crazy, like the things that you'll find when you are prepping for it. Otherwise, you might not have noticed it. You might have been looking for, why men are evil. Show me more evil men. I mean, you don't say that, but if you believe it, that's exactly what you're saying. You're putting in your order to the universe, like, okay, show me this. It's like, okay, I got your back. And the other thing, since we're on that, I want to talk about the way the universe responds is the same as the way the unconscious mind responds. And that is neither one hears negative words. So if you say, don't show me this, it's going to hear, show me this. So if it's like, I don't want any traffic today. You just said, I want traffic. I do want traffic today. So that's what you're going to get. So what are you believing? Look at your reality, and that will tell you what the core beliefs are. So if you believe in lack and scarcity, you're going to see it everywhere. Like maybe you don't even get a pork chop because somebody took them all. Somebody in your family ate the last one. You look at your bank account and it will reflect back to you. What are your beliefs about money? What are your beliefs about yourself? It's everywhere, and it's harder to see it. Another way you can see it is, what are your judgments about other people? Whatever those are will reflect back to you your beliefs. So if it's positive judgments like, oh, she's so pretty, or oh my gosh, he's so rich, I could never be that rich, whatever it is, there are beliefs underlying all that stuff and all your judgments. And then the things that we don't like in other people, those are the things that we find unacceptable about us. Like if I were selfish, I would be unlovable, things like that. So it's kind of, there's lots of different ways to uncover your beliefs. One is, of course, looking at your reality, right? Like, what are you experiencing on a day-to-day basis? No matter what you say you want, you keep experiencing this thing. Another one is look at for the incongruencies, like I was talking about with disease, right? Where are there some places where you're like, oh, I know for sure this is a fact, like I am immune to germs. Okay, what about here? What about things like cancer? If you get a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, do you accept the prognosis? The prognosis is, they tell you, okay, this is how long you have to live, and this is what your quality of life is going to be. The diagnosis is, these are the tests. You have stage 4 cancer, period. Now, in the Dr. Joe Dispenza community, we say accept the diagnosis, but not the prognosis. Be the exception. And there are thousands of people now that are overcoming these things. There was a documentary that some of the folks that do research for Dr. Joe made, and it's called Source. The Power is Within You, I believe. I might have it wrong, but it's called Source. I'm not 100% positive on the tagline, but Source. And in this, there's a woman who had her thyroid surgically removed and it grew back. Nobody can explain that. Nobody, right? Like she has the tests. Her surgeon's like, we don't know what to say. It's never happened as far as we know. But so what? She doesn't have to take the thyroid drugs anymore. And there are people with all kinds of diseases that have tumors disappear, and blind people see, and people with degenerative diseases that haven't walked in 7 years get up and walk. I mean, and if you're in that community, you've seen it, probably in person. And if not in person, go check out the videos online. They're called Stories of Transformation, Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's so beautiful. And if you're ever in a bad mood, or you're like, life sucks, I invite you to watch some of these stories, because I mean, these are people that had no reason to believe that there was a solution for them, and they are recovering because they choose a different belief, and they choose to be in love with life, and to do these meditations and to connect to source. Like if you only have a year left or 6 months, like what would you rather be doing than connecting to God anyway, and just loving that connection and delighting in it? And Dr. Joe has this thing. He says, everybody who heals, they stopped focusing on healing and they started just being happy. They started just doing the thing because it feels so good. And the thing is meditation. That's his vehicle to get people to heal. And it is mind-blowing, all the people that have healed themselves. Now, if they had a different belief, like, oh, I got a stage 4 cancer diagnosis and the prognosis is 3 months, many people die exactly at that time. Many people accept, believe, and surrender to that prognosis. I had to get the right word, because that's the reality they choose to confirm. And I'm saying that's a belief. It's a belief. You're welcome to believe it. All truths are true. I prefer to play. And I love when I discover these edges, like, oh, I was believing that. That was a belief. Holy crap, I didn't even see it. And I love having people in my life that will reflect that back to me. So who do you have in your life that will kind of call you like, really? Is that really a belief? Does every single person on this planet believe the same thing? Because if they don't, it is not a fact. It's a belief, right? And I always look at our realities. If we all had the same beliefs, we would all have the same reality. And clearly, that is not the case. So, thank you so much for watching Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. I will see you right here next week. Have a beautiful, beautiful week. I have a free meditation on my website that is designed to help you regulate your nervous system. Now, I think this is the number one skill that successful people have. And if you think about, there are so many situations that cause dysregulation, that cause us to go into a fight, flight, or freeze response. What if your teenager crashed the car and you got a phone call, your teenager's in the hospital? What would it be like to not go into that fight or flight or freeze, not go into fear, to be like, oh, this is information. Okay. And to have all your faculties, your logic, your love, your compassion available to you to drive over there and to comfort that child or whatever. Or if you get into a confrontation at work, like your boss isn't happy with your performance, you're going to perform so much better if your nervous system is regulated. Because the number one thing, the first thing that happens when you go into that fight or flight, it's a sympathetic nervous system response, is your logical mind shuts off. You have no access to logic. You have access to a strong jaw if you are angry, so you can bite really hard and rip and tear flesh, which none of us are going to do, right? Or your legs get really strong so you can run, or your arms get strong so you can punch. And none of those things we're going to do. They're not useful. If you're in a situation at work, it's not useful. I don't like that. I'm afraid of that, boss. I'm going to run away. Like, we're just not going to do that. Right? So this meditation is designed for you to do it regularly. So when a situation comes up like that, you're going to have these symbols that are anchors that remind you of having a relaxed nervous system. And all you do is you activate those anchors really fast. And you're like, you take a breath or two and you're good to go. So if you want that, check out my website, it's KarenSeltz.com. My email is Karen@KarenSeltz.com. So you can email me there too, since it was coming out anyway. And also want to make you aware that I am doing these beautiful rapid resolution therapy sessions. I am taking a grief course. I've already practiced it. It works beautifully in getting your mind to update and to process the way it's meant to, so that you have access to everything your body can heal. You can access the good memories instead of being frozen on the moment they died or something like that. So if I can support you in any way, please do email me. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great week. Mwah.